Hey, what's up guys? This is TBone here. Welcome back to another episode of playing Legendary Human Heroes. So in today's episode, I'm going to do a mid-event sort of reactions, thoughts, and also just what decks I'm using for the current event, Queens of Salvation. Now, I gotta say, I'm actually having a lot of fun in this event, mostly because I'm not actually just using the current event deck. I'm able to build a couple of decks, and they all work really well. And combined with the updates for this particular event, I thought that, it was just a really good addition of the Mercenary bosses, and I'm enjoying it quite a bit. So I wanted to talk about that and also just kind of show you what I'm doing with my cards. So first things first, let's talk about what's available in the packs here. So again, remember that if you go with the Revival pack in the vault, you can always get, if you're short on coins, you can always get 2 tiers here. For the first 2 tiers, you're going to get 6 coins. So that will help you get the necessary seasonal coins so that you can get a Master Collection card or an ultra rare card for use in the future. And we're also going to talk about what I think is going to be a good one to get for the next upcoming events. So stay tuned for later in this episode. So the first thing, let's talk about the Mercenary bosses. All right, so the Mercenary bosses, I talk about it during my stream. These are bosses that you could either, collect from the vault itself if you opened it, or you'll encounter them throughout your entire event. And as soon as you defeat them, you'll actually collect them at 6 stars. And with it comes along with also the Mercenary token so that you can unlock, you can go towards unlocking your heroes. So as you can see here, I've unlocked all 10 of these. The 2 that are most difficult, as you might imagine, are, the Divine Destinies, as well as Magnum Now. Okay, so the Ultra Rare card and the Master Collection card, but they do drop. And in fact, I actually got 2 of the Divine Destinies, and that allowed me to actually craft an Ultra Rare. So I actually got I had a really good event this time around, simply because I was able to get all of these cards that I was waiting for a long time. And so I can show you what I've got, right? So I collected a Bio Blitzer from the seasonal trophies, and then I also was able to get the Enchanting Empress, which allowed me to then craft the Wave Warrior. So that's one of them. And then I also had 2 Master Collection cards from this event, so I was able to get the Temporal Saviors Ultra Rare. And then because I had the Bio Blitzer from the collections, I was able to get my my Freedom Fighters to 2 stars. So really good event for me, and hopefully your event is going just as well. So let's talk about the event itself and the cards I'm using. So the first one I'm going to show you is what I'm actually using actively in this event. So I'm doing relatively well. I'm keeping up with the team, and I'm able to do just fine. And so you can see here we have a Mercenary boss right now, so we're going to go ahead and attack that. So it is Vigilant Asuka. So these are the more common cards, but what's nice is these are the Generation 3. These are the Generation 3 cards that are stronger, and they still have a type associated with it. So you can use these for. So you can also use these for the Spire, so that you can collect these heroes, and then you can use them to help you defeat the floors. Or if you don't need them anymore, it gives you a nice 400 dust for the Light Slayer. So that is actually a really nice addition. And one quick note about when they spawn. So these Mercenary bosses will spawn approximately 2 hours after the last time you defeated a Mercenary boss. So it is actually timed. So like right now, I just defeated one. In about 2 hours time, I should expect another one to come up. There is no guarantee as to which one is going to show up, but you could sort of estimate that around 2 hours time frame is when you're going to see it. And that's why if you've logged off for a while and you come back, you might notice that you'll see a Mercenary boss. That's the reason why. So I just showed you a deck that I was using, but I actually didn't show you sort of like the full skills here. So this is the one I'm actually using, the Beast Mode one. So the cards that I'm using consist of the Freedom Fighters. Again, you can craft this. You can craft this today if you have Bio Blitzer from the seasonal rewards. It's at 4.6 thousand tokens. So if you collected him, you can actually get the the accompanying militant maven from the Proving Ground store. So you can actually get yourself a Freedom Fighters card. This is one of the best cards around to have. Like, you will be able to use this card. I've used this card for over a year and he's still extremely relevant, still really good. Love using this card. You can see I've really invested in this, and I was able to get him just to 2 stars just events. So this is definitely one of my always go-to cards for Dark Slayer events, even Dark Commander events. Highly recommend it if you don't already have it. So Sparus the Goliath is the other card that I have. And so this was from the previous Dark Golem deck, and that was actually a commander deck. And the reason I'm using this is because Glorious Golems, it actually has a couple of really good properties for these cards. First, it also gives you 600% health, 300% damage, and 600% health for all Dark Immortal Killer heroes. So I can put my current event cards in there. I could put Bio Blitzer in there. They're all Immortal Killers, and they will all get the health benefit. It's not going to get the 900% boost because this only gives 900 boost to commanders, but that's okay because I have Bio Blitzer to give me the additional damage for the Slayer cards, and also my my support card and my event card from this event are already boosted. But what's nice is Glorious Golems and also Sparus, they will passively create power gems. So every turn, every 4 turns, or every 3 turns, they will create 5 power gems. Okay, so that's a lot of power gems to create, and that helps with your turn 1 damage, which is very important if you wanted to get in on the 15% or even MVP of your bosses. So those are the 2 cards I have, and I use Glorious Golems as a leader for this reason. Even though it's a commander card, it doesn't really matter anymore if most of your cards are immortal. And for my 4th card, I've chosen to put Virago, which is the event card from this particular event, because he does create power gems and he increases Immortal Killer attack by 100%. So it's still a nice little boost to my entire team, especially in Slayer. It makes a lot of difference, so it is a good card to put in there. And then the sort of the pitfall of this setup here, if you don't already have Glorious Golems, Sparus, for example, is you're sort of lacking on the power gem creation overall. And so to sort of round it out, I'm using Draconic Scoundrels, which is also an amazing card for a couple of reasons. Number one, it will destroy all gems and create a bunch of power gems depending on the gems on the board, so you can see later how well it works. And it will cleanse all debuffs. A debuff includes things like power gem silence, and also flatline, panic. All of these. Judgment, all of these are considered debuffs. The only one that this will not work well for are power gem silence, gem silence, and also toxin, because it has a heal. So those are the 3 that it won't be able to cleanse, but it cleanses everything else, which is nice. So let's take a look now. We're going to go up against a guild boss, and that was just taken out. So we're going to go to another guild boss, and we're going to see how much damage this will take. So we're going to go up against Oglyph. We're going to go in here, and I'll show you, like, this is a really fast deck. Generally, if I'm going up against a smaller boss, this is sufficient for me to get enough damage for turn 1. So you can see on turn 1 here, I'm actually able to deal over 100 billion. I was able to deal about 150 to 170 billion already, and that usually is sufficient for a lot of the smaller, like sort of like the regular non-eternal, non-infernal emerald bosses. But now what I'm going to do is I'm just going to be doing a turn 2 damage, and you can see on turn 2 I'm able to deal over 1 trillion. Now I am using a 2-star Bio Blitzer here, so my damage is at 600% boost as opposed to the 400% boost. But before this, I was actually, just before I started doing this video, I was at just 1 star, and with that I was able to come close to about 1 trillion, or maybe just a little bit higher. Okay, and so it is a team that is capable of doing a really good damage really fast. And now let's say you needed to do a now I'm going to talk about a different deck that also takes advantage of the previous Dark Commander deck, and this one will only use 1 card, and that is a High Performance Unit Area. So this card is the ultra rare card from the previous Dark Commander deck. Remember, I had said this is the #1 card that you should invest in one of my previous videos, and this is the reason why. So this card gives you an immunity for 1 turn, which actually works really well in a Slayer event. It will also cleanse all of your cards. Again, works perfectly for Slayer because you activate it and then you get hit on turn 2, and then all of your debuffs are cleansed. And then it will give you this supercharged status that then gives you a 2,500% attack boost for all immortal killers, and that applies to your current event deck. That also applies to Bio Blitzer. So this is the single card that I'm using, and again, I'm using this card as a leader for the additional health. But it doesn't really matter because I also gain immunity, so I don't actually need to have the health boost because I gain immunity. I cannot die on turn 2. Okay, in Slayer events, you only get hit on turn 2, so this card right here is going to give you a perfect protection on turn 2, regardless of how low your health is. So you can actually go up against a pretty high level boss with just a single key and still be able to deal good damage. And so Virago again as the card here for Power Gem, Freedom Fighters as a obvious choice. And then I brought in another Bio Blitzer here because it is a Slayer event. So Bio Blitzer having the 5 times damage boost for Slayer event, and also being an immortal killer, will deal good damage, and it nukes the turn afterwards if I can survive the hit, right? I don't need to survive the hit because I will actually be able to just hit it on turn 4, which doesn't require me to take a hit. So Bio Blitzer and also Freedom Fighters will both nuke as well, so I gain a ton of additional damage there. Draconic Scoundrels, again, just for the additional power gem. So we're going to go and use 1 key here for this 3-turn deck. Now you'll see that the 2500% damage boost is actually very, very significant. So you saw in my previous deck, I was able to deal about maybe close to 2 trillion with a single key on turn 2. Now in turn 3, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to activate this, and generally what I like to do with this type of setup is I like to do a very small match, because this card, whenever it attacks, it also passively creates power gems. So like you want to look for opportunities to create as many power gems as possible, so you can see I really, added as many power gems as I could. And then I just go ahead and I activate from right to left here. You always want to activate your Draconic Scoundrels last. You want to maximize the number of power gems on the board that's already there, and that way you can generate more power gems from this card. And so if you take a look here, a single key here, okay, you saw that my Bio Blitzer dealt over 5 trillion on its own, and this card right here was able to deal close to 12 trillion. Okay, a single key, close to 12 trillion. Now, this is with a 2-star Bio Blitzer. With a single star Bio Blitzer, you're looking at about 8 trillion. Okay, because at 2 stars, you deal 50% more damage than with a single star. And so right now, I could deal about 12 trillion. And before this, with a single star, I was able to deal 8 trillion on turn 3. So he's a very significant team. Now, some of you may not actually have Draconic Scoundrels, and that's totally fine, because there was another card that was available to us, again, as one of the seasonal rewards, and that is Hell. So this card right here, don't forget about her. She is an amazing card to use as well, because as long as you have 4 or more Power Gem 4s on the board, she will create 12 Power Gem 2s on the board. By herself, if you don't have the 4 Power Gem 4s, it's still able to create 6 Power Gem 2s. So 12 Power Gem 4s, that's just, basically for free, will help boost your overall team damage. Now, this is a Generation 2 card, so it's not going to be able to deal as much damage as the other cards, but it doesn't really matter at this point because you're using this card to boost all the other cards. And so here, I'm using this deck now. So you can see I'm also not using the previous Dark Commander team. So what I have here is I have Supreme Sorceress Inia, which is a support card, and I'm using this as a lead. Then I'm using Virago as the event card, and then I have my Bio Blitzer and Freedom Fighters. All of these cards should be available for you right now. Okay, most of you should already have this. If not from the seasonal rewards, then you can craft it yourself, or you should at least have the support card. If you don't have Virago, it's still okay. You can use the second support card, because Virago really is just for 3 additional power gems, but it's not going to be as important if you don't have it. Really, the key here is having the Bio Blitzer card, Freedom Fighters, and Hell. So if you have these cards, then you could basically turn this into a turn 2 deck as well. So we're going to go ahead and, again, just use a single key. We're going to go up against an Infernal Blazing Condor here. And so activation order is going to be pretty simple as well. All you have to do is make sure that you match enough gems to power up all of your cards, and then you can just activate from right to left. I always set up my cards so that my activation orders in a single direction, and I generally go from right to left just to keep it consistent. Okay, and so right now, you can see after I activate Hell, I have basically a full board, close to a full board of power gems. Okay, and with this setup here, I can actually deal almost enough for a trillion on a single key. So this is a team that doesn't actually use a ton of it doesn't have a ton of basically of the cards that are hard to get, like the ultra rare cards, or it doesn't require the Draconic Scoundrels. It doesn't require the Glorious Golems, which are both ultimate forms. This does require an ultimate form that is in the form of Freedom Fighters, but this is the ultimate form that I highly recommend that you get, because you can get it right now within this event, and you can benefit from this. Now, I wasn't able to quite get 1 trillion. I wasn't able to get 1.3 with a 2-star Bio Blitzer. So you should expect that with a single key, you're going to deal approximately 800 billion with a single key with that particular setup. It's going to be a little bit lower if you don't have the event card. So if you have just 2 supports, then expect your damage output to be slightly lower. But it's a really easy to obtain card. You don't have to go deep into your pockets to obtain this deck. And so I think that this is something that is very viable, and it's a turn 2 deck. So you can do this pretty quickly. And one of the things that you'll want to manage in a Slayer event, you want to make sure that you have enough solo keys. Okay, so basically what you want to do is you don't want to go and chase after every single deck, every single boss that comes out, and you don't want to basically go and do a 3-key attack or 9-key attack for everything that you see. Try to preserve your keys as much as possible, and also make sure that you are actively you're actively hitting the guild bosses so that you could actually get the solo keys. So build up this deck. Once you've built up this deck, then you should be able to freely use 3 keys on the guild boss, so you can get as much damage as you can, get practice in, and collect a lot of solo keys, and then you can start going in and you could deal some damage here. And so what I'm going to do is here is we're going to show you with the 3-turn deck now. It's a 36 trillion boss here. It's an Umbral Apocalypse Hellboy. So with this setup here, I could show you how much damage this deck here is capable of dealing. And I actually haven't done this since I've upgraded my Bio Blitzer to 2 stars. Prior to this, at a single star, I was able to deal about 16 trillion by himself, by the Freedom Fighter by itself. And keep in mind, in a 3-key attack, after you do the attack with him, he'll take that the output of the card itself, and it will multiply by 5 as the next nuke damage. Okay, and it only deals that damage on the following turn. So if you haven't used it before, it's not a bug. It's working as intended. All right, so 21.6 trillion by himself. Okay, so 21.6, and then the very following turn, if the boss wasn't dead, it would deal over 100 trillion in nuke damage at the very next turn. So by itself right now, this deck is capable of taking down any boss that comes my way, essentially. Okay, but of course it is a 3-turn deck, so I don't expect to actually be useful in the other solo bosses, even if it's a solo Umbrella Eternal World boss with 900 trillion health, there's generally not enough time for me to get three attacks in before other people take it down. And so what do I do here? Well, in those situations, I have two choices. I generally then sort of fall back into my my turn 2 deck. And what I do is if I think that I can get my second turn in, then I will use 3 keys to attack. If I think that I can only get 1 turn in, then I don't bother with the 3 key attack, or especially I don't bother with the 9 key attack, because I can't get 2% damage anyway. And so in that situation, the best thing you can do is just put your 3 keys in, get some participation bonus, and then you can get out. Or you can actually, get your turn 1 damage in anyway. It's going to register, but it's not going to be enough to hit the 2% threshold. So I can show you here. If you take a look at the amount of health some of these bosses have. So right now, I'll use a 4 trillion health boss, for example. I'm going to use beast mode, and I'm going to go in. I'll use 3 keys right now. So I'm going to go into 3 keys. Now, I'll tell you the reason why you shouldn't use 3 keys for those world eternal bosses if you don't have a deck that's really quick. And that is mostly because just, those are the bosses where you're going to get lots and lots of people jumping in all at the same time, and it becomes a numbers game. And so you can see here, I was able to deal about 500 billion on turn 1. And then being able to, but usually by this point, you may be able to get a second hit in, maybe, okay? And so with this, I could deal about, let's see how much that is. So with that, I was able to deal about 7 or 8 trillion. That might just register 2% on a 900 trillion boss, right? So 900 trillion boss at 2%, you're looking at 2 trillion, close to 2 trillion for a 100 trillion health boss. But for a 900 trillion boss, 2% actually comes out to 18 trillion. So if you're not able to deal 18 trillion damage by turn 2, then you shouldn't be using your 9 keys to attack, because A, you're unlikely to get your third or fourth attack in time, and B, you're not going to be able to register for the 2% damage anyway. And so assess the amount of damage you can actually deal before you decide whether or not you're going to jump in and use 9 keys. Because when you use 9 keys, it actually goes pretty fast. Like right now, I have 185 keys saved up. But if I continue to use 9 keys, jump into a fight, and then not get any of the trophies back in return, then I'm actually losing my keys to trophies ratio, and I'm being inefficient with my keys. Even though it technically is, an infinite amount of keys, the time I spent jumping into bosses and the keys I've spent on those bosses and the trophies I get in return doesn't actually pay off. Whereas I can go in and quickly jump into another boss and use a single key and collect a 15% trophy bonus, and I can actually get a little bit more. Because participation bonus isn't that great as an incentive to use more keys, but it's for those big bosses. So like if you take a look here, here's a world boss for a Radiant. So MVP is great, 166 billion trophies, and it goes a little lower as you go down. So at 2%, it drops down to 29. So your goal here really is to get up to 15% if possible, and it's a little bit more likely with a World Radiant, for example. And then participation wise, it drops all the way down to 7. In fact, participation is lower than rally. So if you can jump in and rally out really quickly, you'll actually get more points than simply just tagging with no keys. And so this is actually going to give you more trophies overall if you can jump in and do a quick damage and get some of the trophies. Like sometimes I would actually go in, just use 3 keys just so I can jump in and get at least 2 to 5% threshold, so I can get some additional trophies for 3 keys. Keep in mind, those 3 keys that I've spent actually net me more trophies than the 3 keys I spent on a World Eternal Umbrella boss. Okay, those bosses are juicy. They have a ton of trophies, but they're also one of the most sought after by people with really, really high damaging decks. And so if you wanted to get more trophies, that actually isn't the best way to do that unless you jump in really fast or if you spawn it on your own. Otherwise, just do what I do. You know, like I collect a lot of these trophies I collect a lot of keys here. And here's another one. Here's a Eternal World Cobalt. So 433, really, really great. And these also go really fast though. Okay, so I think by the time I finish this boss is going to be dead, right? And so what I will do is here, I'll basically just go in and, you know, I'll give my 3-key attack. Not 3 keys. I'm using 1 key here. So I'm using a single key here, but this is not even going to register for 2%. I don't think. Because this one is 36%. I actually might. I might be able to register for 2%. We'll take a look here. Okay, so let's see if I get just participation or 2%. So you can see, like, you know, I jumped in with 3 keys, and I couldn't even deal 2% damage on the Cobalt Eternal World. All right, and the amount of damage I was able to deal, like I said, was close to 500. Actually, this was about 200 billion, right? So 200 billion, not quite enough. And so all I get is participation for 27 billion trophies. So if you take a look at that and then you compare how much I could do on for example, you know, some of the other smaller ones, you'll have to sort of balance that out. So you can do a little bit better if you don't chase after all of the big bosses all the time, and you can save your keys instead, be a little bit smart about it, and then you might actually find yourself jumping up in the ranks also. So that's all I wanted to share today, you know, in terms of the decks. What I do want to go over next before I sign off is I want to talk about the Proving Grounds. I want to talk about what you should think about because of the fact that we got these new heroes from the Mercenary bosses. They actually are pretty significant. First thing is, Dame Ragnell is actually going to be a card that you'll be able to use in the very, very next Earth Commander event, because the next Commander event for Earth is going to be Arcane Killer, and you can also sort of, you know, tell by looking at the Proving Ground store. So keep in mind that now they've sort of shifted to a seasonal. Shifted toward a seasonal format. So every season, they're going to refresh the store by adding 10 new heroes. Okay, and so as of the last start of this season, the first batch, the card of the batch, is from the Draken onwards. So you can see here the Draken and the Sunken Savior, that was from the last event. If you had it, you could use it. Bio Blitzer and the Militant Maven, you can use it this event. The next event is going to be Dame Ragnell and Valiant Vanguard. So that is going to be the Earth Arcane Killer event that you can expect to use. So the fact that Dame Ragnell is a Master Collection card that you can collect this event as a Mercenary hero is huge. Okay, and then next event is going to be the Hellboy event, followed by the Easter event here, Princess Riverine and Stonetail, as well as Lagomorphic Queen. Right. So of these, I think that your best bet is to actually try to get this, basically the Protectors of the Realm ultimate form, especially since you'll be able to get the Master Collection card already. Okay, so if you didn't have this before, hopefully you can get the Master Collection card, so then you can then use your Proving Grounds coin to get the Valiant Vanguard to then give yourself this ultimate form. But if you didn't have the Freedom Fighters, I would still recommend that you go after Freedom Fighters first, because it is just such a useful ultimate form that you're always going to find useful, that I highly recommend continue to do this. But sort of, you know, if you think about how to plan ahead, looking at the Proving Ground store is how you're going to be able to tell whether or not it's going to be something that you want to use and save up for. And the other card that we got, which is Divine Destinies, is going to be available in the next season for the Light Commander event. Okay, and so those are going to be cards that are going to be useful. So keep them around. You're going to find them being around, so you can use them. And the fact that you can collect one of the 2 cards means you can then get your ultimate form easier through the store. So that's something to look into. planning ahead, I would recommend those two as the options for using your coins. All right, so now that's going to be it for this particular episode. Hopefully this has been helpful. Let me know what your thoughts are. Let me know what teams you're running, and if there's anything I can do to help. As always, feel free to reach out to me in the network app, or you can just comment in the video below and let me know your thoughts. Okay, thanks a lot for watching, everybody. Take care. I'll see you next time.